Hello, everyone. Just waiting, just 3:15 right now. I'm waiting for Mr. Voigt and Troy Hilbrands and, anyone else that might be coming. I put the agenda in the chat. This is our first official meeting.
I'm here.
And I see you. Troy, are you Jones LSC?
Yep.
Okay, I made you a co-host.
Oh, okay.
I think so. Yeah, I made you a co-host. So if you do you think Mr. Voigt will be able to attend?
He's coming.
Okay.
I might have to step out for just 2 seconds because we have the picture thing happening today, and I have to get that started.
Okay. And Dr. Powers, is it true you have a 4 o'clock PPLC meeting? Is that? No, that was Tuesday. You're muted.
That was Tuesday.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just trying to get a feel for people's time constraints. Hi, Ellen.
I had to go open Harry Potter Club. I forgot. I'm like, oh, today's Thursday. And Ms. Bessie, I believe Jackson is taking the lead on that. I mean, he has been. He's been doing a great job this year with that.
You have a Harry Potter Club for adults?
They are so enthusiastic. I feel like I know Harry Potter quite well, but they trounce me at trivia all of the time. It's really cool to see like the outlet.
There he is. All right, here's Mr. Voigt. And okay. I'll just give him a chance to connect. All right. Well, good afternoon. This is our first budget meeting of the budget committee of the LSC. And I think it's going to be a small group. Usually budget is for the total nerds. So welcome. And I put the agenda in the chat. I disabled the chat. I think this is a small enough group that we can just raise our physical hand or and let me know if you need to say something or if you want to say something. So our first item of business is to, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 3:18. I'm going to take some preliminary notes right now. Oh, this is the wrong document. Here we go, 3:18. And then, we're looking to have permanent members. Dr. Powers for sure. Troy and Mr. Voigt have said that they would like to be on as permanent members, so that makes 4. We could add 1 more. Someone else would like to be on it, or you're always welcome to just come to the budget meeting. And you don't have to be a permanent member. If we have 4 members, 3 is our quorum. If we have 5 members, 3 is our quorum. So it's just something to think about. Is there someone else that's interested in being a permanent member? If you would unmute yourself and let us know. Okay, that's not a lot of unmuting. Can you, which is fine. So for now, oh, sorry.
I will. This is Carol Dealey. I will if nobody else will. Sorry, I just got on. I was
no, it's okay. I'm just going to repeat it since maybe you didn't hear. So we have 4 members for sure. Myself, Dr. Powers, Mr. Hilbrands, and Mr. Voigt. If you would like to be a member, then we do, require that you come to all of our budget meetings as a voting member. Well, we're not going to be voting on much, but as a member. But you're always welcome to just come. You don't have to be a permanent member.
I'll be a permanent member.
Okay. And
if I need, I'll put myself out for election. Let's put it that way. Do
yeah,
you have to?
We're not really, I guess technically, Carol's nominating herself to be a member. I'm fine with that. I could, let me take some notes, nominate. I could second that on the condition, you know, that you come to the meeting, and if you can't, just let us know.
Well, it's when they're on Zoom, you know, like right now I have to jump in the car and go somewhere, so I wasn't maybe going to attend, but I'll just listen for most of the meeting because I'm just kind of a busy time for me, 3:15. So
okay.
Yeah.
So I guess we could take a vote to determine to say that our permanent members are myself. Let's see, I'm just also taking notes, sorry. Myself, Dr. Powers, Mr. Voigt, Mr. Hilbrands, and Miss Deely. Dr. Powers, I guess I'll do a roll call.
I second that.
Okay, thank you.
Move the question.
So all in favor, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Myself is a yes. Dr. Powers?
Yes.
Troy had to step out. Mr. Voigt? Yes, I saw you say yes. I'm assuming Miss Deely's
Yes.
Miss Deely? She's muted.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And then
I'm here.
Great. And then we'll get I'll get Troy's vote when he comes back. So real quick, I'll do a roll call. I can actually see all your faces, but technically I need to do a roll call. So roll call, I'm here, Sarah's here, Dr. Powers is here. I see him, yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, I know. It's just
big as life, yeah.
I'm just following the protocol. Mr. Voigt?
Here.
And Mr. Hilbrands?
Here.
And Miss Deely, okay.
I'm here.
So we're all here. Troy, we did a vote to make Miss Deely a member of the council.
Great.
So I'll just put you as had to step out for a second. So the next order of business is to approve the agenda. The agenda is linked in the chat. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. And I'll do a roll call vote for the agenda. So I am a yay. Oh, sorry.
Oops, sorry.
Oh. It's okay. Okay, so approval of agenda. I'm a yay. Dr. Powers? He's a yay.
Yay.
Voigt?
Yay.
Hilbrands?
Yay.
And Deely?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so next order of business is to nominate a secretary. But I would just say that budget notes are not too taxing. And a lot of times they don't change from month to month. There's just a few little additions because of what what is being discussed. So do I have anyone who would like to take some notes? I could nominate someone. Mr. Voigt, how would you feel about just jotting down some basic notes, since I think you have a lot of knowledge about what we're going to be discussing?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, so I make a motion to.
It's okay if I type the notes, right?
100%. And for right now, I'm roughly typing the notes, and I'm recording too, so we can always go back and look at the recording for this first one. So I nominate Mr. Voigt. He accepts. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Powers second. I'm going to do a real quick roll call vote. Sarah is yay. Powers?
I seconded him, so yay.
I know.
He's 2 doors down, so it's easy.
I know. Voigt, Mr. Voigt, are you yay?
Yay.
Hilbrands?
Yay.
Deely? Are you a yay for? I know she's driving somewhere, so. Okay. Okay, so this I think is super important, is setting the meeting dates. I know that we had a rough time getting this one going. So if after school is better, I know that Dr. Powers and myself are we could do 7 a.m., but I don't think that everyone here is a morning person. Mr. Hillbrands is shaking his head no. I'm fine with doing it after school. Mondays are much easier for me, but I understand if you have a standing meeting on a Monday already.
I'm fairly flexible, but I agree that I'm not a great morning person. 7 a.m. is definitely not me, but I could do like a 9 or something, but after school definitely works better for me. No day of the week is in particularly bad or good.
3:15 works for me. Probably the Monday or the Tuesday before the LSC meeting schedule.
Yeah, honestly, for me, Monday would be better because I don't have to get another employee to cover me. So
I'm okay with Monday.
if we could set, let me grab a calendar real quick. We'll just set them through June. So this would be April 5th. And right now, Mr. Voigt, I'm taking some notes. So okay. We'll do these first minutes together. April 5th. That's the day after spring break. May 3rd. And then June 7th, which actually might be our regular LSC meeting. I think we moved that one earlier due to end of the year. So we can tentatively, how does April 5th, May 3rd, and June 7th at 3:15 p.m. work for? It's March already, right? Okay.
I don't see any conflicts except possibly in April, but I don't think so. It depends if I were to take a trip that doesn't look good right now. So
if you take a trip, you can always phone in when you're on the plane or something. I'm kidding.
I can make it work.
Okay, so let's say, I guess I make a motion to set the meeting dates to be Monday, April 5th, May 3rd, and June 7th at 3:15 p.m. Do I have a second?
Second.
Troy, second. And then I'm, do roll call real quick. So Sarah is yes. Dr. Powers. He's yes. I hear him.
It's yes. Okay.
Mr. Hillbrands.
Yay.
I just do these out of order all the time. And then Voigt.
Yay.
And Deely. Okay, I think she's unable to unmute right now. Okay, so our first meeting, so we could talk about what kind of reports that we're looking for, so I have a few ideas. My goals would be that the budget meeting is used to do get all of the details worked out so that when we present to the LSC, it's very clear and that we've thought of all the questions that they may ask us and predict what those, and present answers to them so that we can be very efficient. The reports that the LSC will get from Mr. Voigt are the cash disbursements journal and the chart of accounts. And so that's something that he provides to the LSC before the meeting on a monthly basis.
So as a point of clarification, and I should have asked when we were talking the other day, should I have had those prepared and ready today? They're pretty much ready to go. I just didn't know if it's something we want to see during this meeting or we're just preparing for the LSC, or I guess when I should load that. The only, it's not even a concern. The only food for thought there is they would only be accurate up until the budget committee meeting as opposed to up to the LSC meeting. So there is a bit of a time game there, but.
Yeah, I guess and please jump in if you disagree, but I guess my opinion would be, it would be nice to see them before. And then would you be able to just do an update with the dates that would be missing? Like, how hard is it? Just like if we had any questions.
No, it's not difficult. It only changes if like I were to get another requisition, for example, between the budget committee meeting and the LSC meeting. That's something the budget committee would not have reviewed before it's presented to the LSC, or it waits till the next meeting, which is fine as well, but some teachers expect things to be done a little more expeditiously.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to hold up payment for a whole week because we, you know, for that, I would definitely think that you could bring the check requisition request to the meeting all the way up until beforehand. I think it's just nice to at least review. So if there's anything glaring or, you know, something that maybe needed us to ask follow-up questions, that we could do that. And then when you present it to the LC, that we've already answered those questions. Does that make sense?
So then that said, I can forward those to you if you'd like to look at them now, or.
I think for today's meeting, that's okay. I don't think we need them right now. I think unless there is something really.
There's 2 check requisitions that will need approving. Both with Herff Jones regarding graduation supplies. And then nothing out of the ordinary on the chart of accounts or cash disbursements that I saw.
What was the amount for the graduation?
One is for our diploma covers. That's $4,148.72. And the other is for the announcements. That is $3,168.64. Do you want me to forward them to you? I have them ready if you want.
Yeah, I opened the chat. You could put them in the chat if you wanted. I guess my question is, this is something that is paid through graduation fees?
Yeah, so normally, yes, but we also have to get them paid. So something like this, I would first take from the class of 2021 account, which is usually an account that each class has built over their 4 years at the school. It's also an account that's primarily used for graduation items, whether it be supplies like this or the graduation venue, which we may not have this year. But as opposed to a lot of the students, you know, kind of think of it as their account that they use for whatever up to and including prom, which is a sort of we try to dispel that theory because a lot of students don't go to prom. So this should be funds that are benefiting the entire class, and that's why we usually use it for graduation items. So first we would exhaust that account. I'd have to check to see exactly what's in that account. And they might not have whatever this is, 7,300 and some change to pay that in that account. And because this is a sort of an unprecedented year, in normal years, we might borrow from one account, like the activity fees, to pay those bills, and then they pay it back later with the graduation fee. It's sort of uncertain right now whether or not we're doing a graduation fee, so everything's sort of in limbo right now.
I can add something to that also, because last year when we did not have to then pay I think it's $16,000 for the auditorium theater, we essentially covered the graduation fees. Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we covered everything out of internal accounts last year's class.
The big ticket items were, again, grad supplies, caps and gowns, announcements, diploma covers, all of that remained. None of that changed. And then we also had a $3,000 bill to the parking lot where we did the drive-through graduation. And we had a virtual graduation. And I want to say that was maybe 4,000 or 5,000, Troy. Does that sound right? 5,000. So those are the big ticket items. Quick math tells me that was about $25,000, $30,000. We used all of whatever we could from the class accounts. And then Friends of Jones collected donations. I don't believe we had, it was probably around 5,000 from them in donations. And then the school pretty much covered the rest of it. Basically, usually probably through either activity fees. So the rest of the school is kind of pitching in to pay for those things, or maybe rental if we had funds there. I'd have to go through my stuff and see where exactly it all came from.
And depending on all the circumstances this year, we're trying to decide whether to even have a graduation fee, or if such, how much it would be. Normally it pays, the fee pays for cap and gown, other graduation related things, and it pays, significant portion of the cost of the auditorium theater. But if it is a reduced amount, a reduced cost, and again, given the circumstances, we may waive the graduation fee again this year, but we haven't made a final decision. We have to look at our resources.
So for Tuesday's LC meeting, Mr. Voigt, if you are able to provide kind of what happened last year with the disbursements that you just talked about, as far as, you know, the parking lot, et cetera, and then, you know, put together at least what the disbursement is for this upcoming meeting. And then Dr. Powers, you can talk to the point that there's still things that are unknown, and that will be addressed in the April and May LSC meeting. But at least to give the council some background as far as what happened last year, because, you know, $3,000 for a parking lot sounds expensive to me, but it's cheaper than the auditorium theater, so I get it. And I missed, because what was the $5,000 was for? I missed that because my phone. So
yeah. So do you want me to kind of recap the whole situation?
Not right now in this meeting, but like for the LSC, like in a written form, how like in a chart or so, you know, like a bullet point.
Yeah, I can put something together. I don't know that I'll be attending the LSC meeting. Was that the expectation?
No, you don't have to attend. You
Okay.
could meet with me and have me present it, or Dr. Powers could present it. That's fine. I just think it would be nice for the council to know, you know, and the community to know, you know, that there's still stuff going on for graduation and
some of these pieces, just to kind of go, like the parking lot, for example. I mean, they're giving us a deal essentially. It probably doesn't sound like it, but if you imagine a downtown parking lot on State and Harrison with 250 spots on a Sunday, $3,000 is pretty cheap. I mean, they don't get a lot of business at that time, but they still have the, you know, the prerogative to charge kind of whatever they want. So I understand what you're saying. I see some of these price tags and I'm like, wow. Like,
no, I'm sorry if I wasn't passing judgment on the amount.
No.
I think it would be good to just, you know, just to show it. That's all.
Yeah. So I will try to put something together, with a big, you know, disclaimer that this is what we did in 2020. It's just hard to predict for 2021. I think we're all sort of under the understanding that we're going to be doing something very similar to what we had to do last year. So then, yes, it would be good to know kind of where all that's coming from. But again, like the donations, we have no idea, you know, what they might collect with Friends of Jones for donations, or if we're even doing that part of it. I would guess we are, but you know.
Well, that's why I want you to,
sure,
to present it, so that, so just so you know, if you can't cover it with internal accounts, what you might be asking for. That's all. Okay. Okay. Then next thing I had on my notes, so that was reports. So I think for the time being, you know, continuing with the reports that you've done historically, which is submitting the chart of accounts, and then, you know, asking for the check requisition, and then Dr. Powers would take care of the fundraisers, presenting the fundraisers. And but other than that, I don't see on a monthly basis the need for anything else at this time. I wanted to look a little bit forward while we have some time to talk about, if Dr. Powers could talk a little bit about the April timeline and, you know, what you've heard about receiving the budget. And then if you could let me know, what do you historically do, present to the council in April or whenever you have gotten the budget? That would be helpful.
You'd like me to say something now on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now we're anticipating the budget sometime in the middle of March, but I say anticipating, it could be later than that. We know that the budget will be based, our student-based budget will be based on our 20th day enrollment from last fall, which for us was 1,966 students. If we fall short of that, there is a hold harmless aspect to it, so there would not be any loss to the school. However, if we come in over that amount, which we are probably anticipating we will, because we shrank slightly frankly, due to the pandemic. We had some people relocate, change schools, things like that. So we're right at about 1,950 kids. We can quite easily have 1975, 1980, somewhere in that neighborhood. So if it is set at 1966, and we come in higher than that, then that per pupil will get all of that as an additional distribution or allocation at the beginning of October. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. At this particular time, I mean, if we were expecting a very large increase in population enrollment, we have the option to request an advance on that. I don't know that that's going to be necessary, but we want to look at the numbers first. We've never had to do it before. Normally, if we're able to staff at the level we are at right now, we'll be fine. And then if we have anything extra, that's money we will not have to take out of internal accounts for staffing purposes. We did spend about, Jeremy, I think it was about $400,000 this year out of internal accounts just to cover full staffing needs. And that's not something you want to continue to have to do.
392 to be exact.
392,000, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it is
that's a ton of money.
But it's also, that was one of the reasons why we had the Bridge the Gap rainy day fund that was raised by FOJ several years ago, was just for this type of circumstance, and we used it.
I saw that in the chart of accounts, 392K. So that's what that was for. That was to cover the positions, bridge the gap.
Right.
Okay.
Some of it was from the Bridge the Gap fund, and some of it was from other funds.
Yeah, Ms. Ma, you're referring to last meetings. Is that correct? Last
yes,
month?
yes.
Yeah, because I don't think it's reflected on this month, because I couldn't remember quite when it was paid, but yes, it would have shown up on one of those.
Okay. So that 392K was from the Bridge the Gap funds from Friends of Jones. It was not from rental, not all of it. Okay.
No, not all of it.
Do you know how much of it was, or?
Jeremy, how much was the Bridge the Gap? It was like 250.
I think it was 230 from the Bridge the Gap. And then I can tell you the exact breakdown if you'd like.
I think that would be helpful, like, to know that breakdown when you go into the budget planning, because that's an unsustainable amount. I didn't realize. So when I talked to Friends of Jones, they said that they didn't fund positions, but this was, they previously had fundraised this money.
Yeah, this was designed so that we did not have to cut positions. And because we were able to, I can't remember, was this 3 years ago? 4 years ago? I cannot remember exactly.
It sounds about right.
I think it was 4 years ago. And we went through a major budget retrenchment, and we were able to not cut positions by some pretty careful management. And as a result, we were able to hold the Bridge the Gap fund as an emergency fund, essentially, and not use it immediately. And now we have used it. So.
Okay. And you haven't heard any rumors that they're going to give us more SBB money? I haven't heard any. I just always wishful thinking. Yeah.
They do adjust the per pupil allocation, but I have not gotten any word of what that might be. It does have to be adjusted because of the various steps in the contract and the raises as they kick in. So in other words, if we have X amount, we've got to have X amount plus this. Even if everything remains static, all the same teachers, they get raises. And that has to be covered in the 115 funds.
Right now, our per pupil amount for Gen Ed is, last year's per pupil amount for Gen Ed was $5,588.59.
And it's been in that 5,000 range since they started the SBB process, or more or less.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. FY20 was 5588. FY21 was 5785. So they did increase almost 200.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means they will increase next year.
We don't know.
Especially with a pandemic, I would not want to try and predict that.
No.
Well,
But again,
yeah, and I think the 2020 that 5785 was due to the fact that the state of Illinois had recalculated the way they did SVB.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Okay. Wow, that's frightening.
A lot of money.
It's just a lot. Do you feel like this is in line with the other selective enrollment high schools, that they're also funding these positions through Friends of Money?
Some are much more leveraged than we are. There are schools that were paying for recurring positions routinely out of fundraising, essentially from internal accounts. This is probably the largest time we've had to do this. In fact, I know it was the largest we've had to do. Normally, it's been something much more marginal, and we've been able to fund some of our positions on an ongoing basis through the supplemental grant fund from state of Illinois, which we get routinely. But that's not a growing amount of money. That's a slightly declining amount of money because it's based on the percentage of kids that you have eligible for free and reduced lunch, and our fee waivers. And we've gone down on that over the last 10 years from around 50% down to about 38%, something like that. Jeremy, I think 37% on fee waivers. Over a third, I believe.
Yeah, it's definitely gone down over the last 5 years, but I don't know if I could give you percentages.
Yeah. But it's that's where we get, that's what that amount is based on. So that has come down while costs have gone up simultaneously. So it doesn't play as big a role as it used to in terms of.
I also want to add, Ms. Ma, the 392 that we had to cover those positions. If you recall, there was one position I couldn't remember. There was a halftime science position that had to be opened in the summer because our anticipation was that we needed a halftime science. Then with some restructuring and stuff, we ended up not needing it. However, at that point, we have to pay for that position already. We've asked for the position, they've earmarked it and put it into our budget, so that has to get paid for. The money that doesn't get used, because we closed it out right away, and so then that chunk of money doesn't get used, but it does roll over and we get to use it in subsequent years. So next year, some of that money, that 392, it's not, the bulk of it by any means. It's just a halftime teacher position, but we could call it about 60 grand. That should roll over to next year, or it's being used this year for some of our overtime funding, which we have for various things like after school sports or weekend sports. We need to pay overtime as well. That all comes from 124 funds as well.
Okay, so it's not like we can count on a halftime position rollover. You're not sure yet until you see what the overtime looks like?
Well, it's just not that black and white.
Okay. Because it's one bucket of money.
Yeah, exactly. That halftime science position, let's call it 60 grand. That money stayed on a budget line that now we pull from for overtime on a weekly basis. I mean, daily really, but it's every pay period. Anything left on that line at the end of the fiscal year, that does roll over to next year. If they were SBB funds, they would not roll over to next year.
Can you explain, I'm sorry, can you explain a little bit about the overtime? That's new, it's just new to me, as far as,
the process of
how do you get approved for your overtime, and like how is there a cap, and is it per school? I'm just curious from like a.
There's a few of us involved in that. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the only one sort of answering this question, but
we could circle back to if you
primarily anything. Well, we stagger our staffing, and Dr. Powers may know more about that, but our engineers, if there is our programs going on after school or on the weekends, we try to stagger our staffing as much as possible so that an engineer is working a later shift and not getting overtime. It doesn't always work that way, and I don't believe anyone is regularly scheduled on Saturday. Is that right, Dr. Powers?
That's correct. Engineers, any work on the weekend for engineers is overtime.
Okay.
And I think it's time and a half for Saturday and double time for Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Actually, it's a little different since they went over to Aramark or
Sodexo.
yeah, it's a really funky system that they do. It's like if they work 40 hours in a 7-day period, then their overtime is based on that. And if it goes over a certain amount, then it's double time. So there's no real way of monitoring that. So luckily, most of the times, the people that are working overtime hit that 6-day mark and they never go into the 7 days. Or there's a balance where maybe they do go into that double time bucket, and we balance it out because of 4 weeks prior to that we've had enough rentals that have balanced it out. But it's very rare, and Aramark does a horrible job of sending an account list and itemized based on what they were working, the hours they're working, and what it was for. I monitor overtime mainly because I do all the rentals, and a lot of the overtime, kind of echoing what Jeremy says, it's the primary people that are getting overtime, and overtime is kind of like a loosely used. Security officers may get overtime, but they're getting extra hours. There's no additional pay for their overtime, and that's per their contract with CPS. Custodians do get OT1, which is
Time and a half.
Time and a half. And then engineers is a whole different thing. Most of the overtime comes from rentals, and that kind of bleeds into, so if we have a lot of student groups will do events where, and these are things that the kids are not going to think about, and really, I don't think they should think about. But if they go past 7 o'clock, well, someone has to be here, and depending on who is working already, we'll have to fill those spots, and that money comes from overtime comes from rentals.
Okay, so I definitely think that this is something maybe we as a budget committee could look at more. Figure out how would we want to look at overtime? Do we want to look at it on a monthly basis and compare different months to see, if we're spiking for some reason? I would think during the pandemic, maybe overtime has been less, but I don't want to make that assumption.
No, you're right. It has.
But
okay.
so is income. We have not had rental income.
Yes, and that's my next. So I think it would be good for me to know everything that you guys just said. For example, Aramark does a horrible job with itemizing, but they have different overtime rates versus the security officers, and maybe just just to start so I can start wrapping my head around, is this a big part of the budget or not? Maybe this is oh my gosh, small peanuts, but if it's something we can look at. And the other thing I was going to ask Dr. Powers, just going back to the positions that you have you had any success getting appeals? Have you appealed your budget, the money that they give you? For example, maybe they aren't funding your SPED positions properly, or
I did appeal because we lost 2 special ed resource teachers for this year. We did appeal that. We did not succeed. However, we've got a plan in place that we have submitted as part of the increase in the number of kids we're going to be getting with IEPs. And one of the primary things we're requesting on that is restoration of one or both of those positions for next year, because we're going to be adding a good many additional kids with IEPs. And the number of kids with 504 plans continues to grow, but they're not covered by those resource teachers. They are covered, however, in some of the co-taught classes. So definitely we're moving in that direction. Just a real quick recap, though, on the overtime thing. Monday through Friday, for most of what we need it for, overtime is not necessary because we, especially if it's a sudden thing that happens, then we might have to ask somebody to stay, additional hours, and there might be a little bit of overtime, but that's rare. Instead, what we would do, if we know, for example, we've got a play or a concert, none of which is happening now, of course, but if we do, or a sporting event, we make sure that we have the security coverage here, typically under, quote, normal school day with full attendance and everything else. We have security from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. So that we do have somebody here. We have engineers from 4 a.m., 5 a.m. until about 7 p.m. And we can stagger that just a little bit if we need to. And we have custodians from 4 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. So overtime is not a big issue Monday through Friday. One of the reasons why we've had some additional overtime this month is because the very truncated winter sports situation has pushed the need to have events on Saturdays that we often do not have. So most of our overtime under normal school circumstances are for rental situations, the churches that meet on Sundays, if we get them back, which I hope we do, and other kinds of rentals like that. And then that pays for the overtime as part of the fee that the outside organizations pay. So it works out reasonably well. But we can't, for example, we can't stagger the schedules over the 7 days of, say, the engineers. We can't have an engineer work Tuesday through Sunday. That's against their contract. So
no, I mean, that makes sense. And then when you're looking, I was hoping, so on another point would be if Troy, it doesn't have to be in April because we're going to have a lot going on in April, but maybe May or I would love to see, like, I know we don't have rentals right now, but what is the rental income historically that you've been able to get? And, and looking at the gross and the net, taking into consideration that you have to pay overtime for security. Because I agree, like it's still a win, right? Your net is still worth it. So, but just to give the council an idea of, like, normally I'm just throwing them. Normally we have 200K in rentals, but we don't have that this year. So what are we going to do with the budget to bounce this around? So just something to think about, and I'll put this in like a follow-up, but I would love to see the rental income. I really hope that, has CPS said anything about allowing indoor rentals yet or not yet?
No, the rentals won't. I mean, I don't expect anything to be returned. I had a very candid kind of conversation with my main point contact with CPS and one of the main lawyers that handles a lot of the real estate. Essentially, it's until we are full capacity with our students, there's no expectation of doing any kind of rentals whatsoever. Even like I had a movie that wanted to film outside of the school and just use our parking lot, and I was declined on that. So it's those kind of things, but they would allow like our field, Cermak and state to be used if it's outdoors and there's, they even kind of monitor how many people are playing. So, the rentals is really hard to predict because you never know year to year what's going to be like. And there can be ups and downs to all of
that. Okay. Yeah. Ellen?
Sorry, I was just putting in the chat. I need to head out to actually have a parent and student conference. We're doing some visits. So I'm going to go do some now, but thank you so much.
Thank you. I was trying to go back to the agenda. Okay, so I only have one last thing before we could do public comment and then adjourn, which is the fees. And let me put this. It's just something that I know we have to, the LSC needs to approve, pretty sure on an annual basis. I don't know, Dr. Powers, if you have
Right. The
revisions that you think are going to be coming down, and then when would you present that?
Right. The LSC has to approve the fee schedule annually, and that's normally done in late spring, typically after we get the budget and after we get any kind of adjustments that we feel like we need to make to fees. Probably May is okay. The most likely time. It could be as late as June, but I don't think so. We should be able to do it in May. And we are looking at some fairly significant changes in the fee structure. It's kind of grown over the years with a lot of smaller fees attached to various things. We're trying to do an assessment of that just to see exactly what changes that are logical for that. So we are working on that, and we should have that for the LSC's approval by May. That's our intent anyway.
Okay, and we could talk about that. I could put that on the agenda for the April budget meeting, just to, get it on the agenda, April budget meeting. I had talked to Mr. Voigt, just to orient myself with, Jones and how things work at Jones. And so it's in April. Can you also potentially address, will certain fees that were charged but maybe not used, will those roll over? Like how will the pandemic year affect the fees, for example, that weren't used and were collected? And I know that's complicated because I know that not everyone pays fees. So
I could start if you'd like, Dr. Powers.
Sure.
So
please.
For the most part, and we get a lot of parent questions, or I specifically get a lot of parent questions about this. Fees like the activity fee, freshman PE kit, class fees, things of that nature, those were still assessed and at the same amounts. The reasoning behind it was, one, we assessed these in August. So our thoughts were that we potentially are coming back at some point during this school year. It's hard to predict what was going to happen. But also, many of the programs in which their budgets are built off of all these fees, like the science class fees, the art class fees, the aquatics class fees, and then the activity fee in general, that's how we build all these different various department budgets. I think a lot of families are under the understanding or think that they're not spending as much because of the pandemic, when in reality, a lot of them are spending just as much or more because there are different software programs they need in order to do their virtual learning effectively. The directive from CPS, and Dr. Powers, feel free to chime in, was that as long as the fees are being used towards e-learning programs of some kind, they are still permissible.
Correct.
So
Correct.
We went ahead with that. As far as athletics fees, nothing has been charged for the entire year because we haven't had sports the entire year. That's why those kind of fees are charged as we go per season, not at the start of the year. Same with AP exam fees. That's a big question mark for us still. We don't really know if CPS is covering those this year, if they're going to be discounted in any way, or if we're going to have to charge students the full amount because that's what College Board is charging us. So right now, those are also in limbo. That's kind of a brief recap of where we're at with fees. Now, if it was decided that, hey, not everything was used, or, I mean, I hesitate to make suggestions like this because you can see there is the numbers problem for us continually with the pandemic going on, especially without rental income and things like that. But there is an option that we could offer some sort of reduced rate or a credit in the fall or something like that, and not change the fee schedule per se, but just say, okay, maybe less was given from what you expected. So it's just hard to do because a lot of the fees are based on their schedules. So it's almost a student by student basis, you know. And
Yeah.
as far as the PE one, they only get that their freshman year, but they're going to be using it for the first 2 freshman and sophomore years. So, you know, if we took it away now, they'd just pay it again when they're sophomores. Not again, they'd pay it the initial time when they were sophomores, as opposed to paying it the initial time when they were freshmen, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can I ask this one question? So when I was looking at the chart of accounts from February that, you know, you sent, the line item activity fee said 267K. So, but then all the different, you know, baseball, swimming, they also have their own, but, you know, balance. So how, is it that how do you disperse from the activity fee line?
So it's more like everything goes into a large pot at the beginning, and then we pull from that pot and build each of the different department budgets. Some of those departments, like science, I would first pull all of the money from the elective science class fee. Now that isn't nearly enough to cover their budget, which I believe is $16,000 per year, because there's lots of consumables and things. There's lots of reasons why science has a much bigger budget and why we charge that class fee in that class. So first we would pull all those class fees from that account. I'd push that towards their budget, and then I'd supplement it with activity fee amounts. Okay. Same goes for the arts. First, I'd pull all the visual art class fee money, put that in their account, and then I'd supplement it to get them to whatever their budget allocation is for the year, which I believe is like 12,000, something around there.
So you know what my next question is?
Go for it.
Do you have that itemized? Like what you pull from the activity fee line?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of what we're touching on is in our budget spreadsheet that we present to the LSC each year. And I don't know if maybe you haven't seen it ever, but I can certainly forward that to you. But it breaks all that down, what everybody's budget is, when it was allocated to them, and it breaks down, you know, they're rough estimates, because like this year especially, we have no idea what's going on with the pandemic, but it also breaks down rental income and where those monies go to. And it breaks down, there's not much to break down with the SBB funds because they give us a big chunk and it all goes to.
Obviously not enough by 392,000. No, I think I saw it sometime, but I don't think I have a copy of it.
Sure.
Potentially that's something we could share with the LSC briefly at next week's meeting, to say, hey, you're going to get something that looks like this in April. You know, if you want to orient yourself to what the spreadsheet looks like, this is what we did last year. I think that would be really helpful, so that the super nerds like myself, you know, we can get in there and make sure we know what's going on.
We can that way we can certainly show what the structure looks like, how we present it. Then if we do get the budget on the schedule that we're looking at right now, we'll be able to put that together, bring it to this committee, hopefully within its scheduled time frame that we've got, and then to the LSC, and then it will be due shortly thereafter. Now, there is the possibility, however, our next meeting is right after spring break. We may not have that budget completely prepared yet. And we would buy it the following week, we'd have to, for the LSC meeting. We want to avoid a special LSC budget meeting if we can. There's no point in having a separate meeting if we don't have to have one.
Right,
But
and
I'm only budget.
I'm only smiling because I've been in the LSC when we got the budget in July. So if we get
I have.
So if we get it,
I've been the principal with the budget in July too.
I'll be pretty jazzed. I'll be pretty excited. But I've never not had a special meeting for budget because it's never really happened on a time frame that works. But
we've been pretty fortunate for years. We were able to get it in a way that we were able to have the meeting in May or June at the latest. But we went through several years there where it was
was
not approved until June, and we got it in July, and we had to have a special meeting.
I think it was about 3 years ago, Dr. Powers, right? That they had a big catastrophe regarding specifically pensions and things. And that was the year everything was delayed months. And they've sort of done an overhaul of things since then. And in the last 3-4 years, it's been pretty much more punctual.
Exactly. It's actually getting better.
The thing that I'm trying to avoid is the LSC feeling like they have no voice, you know? So what happens with budget is like, you guys are scrambling, you just cram the numbers, you get it to work, and then you're like, approve it, you know? And that might happen again, but it would be nice if it felt like a little bit more collaborative.
Well, I think you're assuming that it wasn't.
No, I'm assuming that I'm speaking from my past experience of having budgets.
From my experience for the last 12 years here, previous 12 years, we have had a collaborative effort.
But I'm not saying that it's the school's fault. I'm saying it's CPS downtown giving it to you so late and then they're like, oh, approve it by in 1 week, and you have no time. And then I've also been on LLCs where we flat out rejected to approve it because it was just not enough money to cover our salaries. It sounds like that Jones is in a very similar position, is that you are not able to cover the salaries that you need to cover with SBB money, even though you get more as a selective enrollment high school. And that's, to me, is,
we don't get more for SBB than as a selective enrollment high school. We get the same per
You get the same SBB. Do you get a supplement? You get another supplement though.
We get the state distribution, but that's also the same on the same formula as anybody else.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood. I thought
we get the same SBB per pupil allocation as any other school.
Okay. So for example, at elementary school, if you have an options program, you get $1,000 more per student. So I didn't realize that you get nothing.
We also don't get Title I, for example.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a high enough percentage of students on fee waivers. So we actually get less than some other schools per pupil. Where we have been able to be successful up to, in fact, even including this year, is that we have had growth, although we've leveled off and we're not going to grow significantly past where we are now. We can't pass 2,000. We simply don't have the room. Mm-hmm. And we grew for years, which meant that funded the growth of the faculty and staff, which is our primary. I mean, that's like 85–90% of our costs are personnel of any school. And we've also been very careful with our management of our funds, and we've had the income from rental to help offset costs of what I would consider to be supplemental personnel that are not considered to be, it's not the principal, assistant principal, and the teachers. We have a tech coordinator. We pay for the tech coordinator, that kind of thing. So we have been very, very careful with all of this. And we've been able to remain solvent as a result, and we haven't lost any teaching positions in 12 years, in the 13 years I've been here.
Okay. This is exciting. Does anyone have any other comments or before we move to a public discussion? No. I'm gonna work with Mr. Voigt. I'm gonna clean up my notes a little bit, and then he can add his magical details, and then we'll submit these as draft minutes for approval. And then I'll reach out to the core members with agenda for the next month. But just to recap, looking for maybe some rental history from Troy. I think that'd be great if you could present to the council like how much we do count on that money and they understand that. And then maybe from Mr. Voigt, looking at how we've had to bridge the gap, more than just using Friends of Jones money, but also just, what percent, not percent, but like what positions have we had to pay with not using the money from SBB? Yeah. And so is there any other comments?
Is there something specific that you want laid out for the income?
I think it would be interesting. You've been here for a while, maybe the last 3 years, like looking at, looking at how much rental income you get net.
So if I can just interrupt again, that is, and I think it was the first meeting with this LSC, we did present that budget spreadsheet that we were talking about, and that has those estimates for this fiscal year. I think we've, I updated it for the new LSC since it was around the beginning of the year. So it's going to be pretty accurate, including the pandemic numbers. And then I have previous years too, if you want to see those. Unless Troy had some harder figures that are better than the estimates, but they're pretty close because it's always the same monthly lease amounts, for rental.
And I guess that's what I'm gathering is when I mentioned before that it's really hard to predict what the rentals are going to be. The amounts that I gave Jeremy for the LSC is predictable. Recurring rentals. If it's over a certain amount, I'll definitely include it for that. But I get so many that are just, one day use for $500, and that's one and done.
Maybe it's more efficient to look at what the previous years, what the income from fiscal 2020, fiscal 2019, just. And you were very intimate with the data, and you already know that. I thought that the council, it might be good to impress upon them how important that money is. And
what I could do is I could just give kind of a breakdown of, some of the biggest rentals that we have, and then the crossovers between what overtime pays. And I mean, there's even overtime that we are able to cover, those events are going on so that other events happen. I think I could probably come up with something.
Yeah, but let me think on it too. Let me think, what am I asking for?
And then I'm going to forward you the one from January. I updated it on January 11th. There's a bunch of zeros under the rental because really, I don't think we've had a single rental that we could call any kind of income. But 2020 is there as well if you'd like to compare. And the 2020, and I just emailed that to you with some other stuff from earlier for 2020. So we've got Grace Episcopal, Chicago Church, People's Church, the Smelt Swim Team, Kick Soccer, Mikvah, Iguanas. All of those numbers are pretty accurate just because Troy has a pretty solid annual lease with them, and that's the full year of the monthly income coming in from those leases. So that should give you a pretty good idea. So in 2020 it was almost $500,000.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah. I worked hard that year.
Yeah, is it $500,000? Is it if we're down $500,000 rentals, but we still have the same salary issue, we're going to be dying when we do this. I mean, you don't have $500,000 in internal accounts.
No, but we did pay what we said, $392 this year because this is a non-traditional year, and fortunately we had that rainy day fund to draw from, along with other things that we've built up over the years. Our anticipation, and of course we can't say for certain, but we're hoping things are back to normal with rental in the fall. If certain people have pulled out and said they're not coming back for good, then Troy's got to start marketing and looking for new people, but it is.
I got to start getting my hair done.
Yeah, it is. He does get quite a few inquiries, and I feel good that we will have rental kicking back in for FY22. And even if some of the other former ones don't come back, I think there is potential for new ones. But I understand what you're saying.
It's tough to make a budget for fiscal year 22 when you don't know what that number is. So that's all.
It's tough even just with CPS. I mean, even when they give you hard numbers, it's hard for us to create the budget and stick to it, but it's all very fluid. It's not as black and white as we'd like it to be.
So that $392 that you spent this year, and I'm sorry, we will wrap this up. That is because we were lacking the rental income, or would there have been a certain amount that you would have had to pay out of internal accounts regardless? I guess it depends, right? If you had 400K in rentals.
Going into the school year, I think we had allocated our halftime orchestra teacher to always have come from internal accounts. When she was hired, that was the plan for her salary. Nobody beyond that was necessarily, but also we didn't get our 20th day numbers that we were hoping we would get. And that's a chunk of money too, right, Dr. Powers?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
As an illustration, if we have 1,986 kids instead of 1,966 kids, that's 20 times $5,500, give or take.
5,785.
What's that?
5,785.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about over $100,000. Well, that's the equivalent of at least a teaching position plus.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got the flexibility. We are going to try to boost, because again, the enrollment sagged a little bit. We got nothing additional. If we boost it back to where we think it can and should be, we would get some additional for next year, but we won't get it till October.
Right.
So we may have to, use other funds temporarily, and then when if a new allocation comes to us, then we switch that back over again.
Right.
Which we've done in the past.
Right. All right. I'm good. Anyone have any other comments? It's been an hour. I think it's enough budget for one day. No, we're good.
Good.
Troy, let's talk, we can talk more. And Mr. Voigt, just about I don't know what
yeah.
Let me look at what you gave me and
exactly.
I'll follow up.
Take a look at all that stuff and feel free to set up a meeting if you want to talk some more. We can look at it all.
I think it's good. I just want to make sure the council is not surprised in April. Like if we can give them something in March, I'll be happy. All right.
Okay.
So,
and I'm apologizing already for my meeting notes.
Well, we'll help each other out. I'm not worried. I'm not worried. Okay. So our next meeting is the day after spring break, April 5th at 3:15. So looking forward to seeing all your smiling faces and seeing what, hopefully the pandemic just keeps getting better and better news and we get those rentals back. So seeing no further business, I'm just going to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you in April. Well, I'll see you next week. Okay. Thanks. Bye.